Instructional Committee meeting, Item 2, acceptance of the minutes of the Instructional Committee meeting of September 5th, 2017. Any questions, comments? Okay, Karen?
I have a clerical correction under letter B on page 2, which will be taken care of by the secretary.
Okay. Any others? Should we take consensus? Roxanne?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And yes. Thanks. Item 3, curriculum and possible consensus. Any of these I can group together, Sal?
Actually, I think Kate O'Donnell's here. She's going to read through each one, page by page.
Yeah, no. Okay, bye-bye.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's what
You just wanted to see if we
Karen
were
will
awake.
give me all of her
I
corrections.
thought,
I'm
I'm
just
not
kidding.
falling for that.
No, she's going to, I think, Kate, if you could just kind of give an overview. I think what? Oh, go for it, Mr. Votto. No.
Now, before you start, did Pat Reynolds get in touch with anybody about
He did.
complaints?
He did.
He did?
Yep, he emailed me over the weekend. We
Wanna give her a
talked
call?
kind of back and forth about,
I'm not bringing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's teaching this
He's
evening.
teaching tonight.
But I saw him last week, and he said that he was going to contact Kate, and I know they connected.
yeah, he had a couple comments about some of the learning objectives and what they included, because he's taught earth science at the college level, so, he just had some questions about that, so he did reach out.
All right.
So we started in January of last year working on the middle school curriculum, and we worked on it like once a month. I would meet with the grade levels. I had 10 of the 12 middle school teachers working on the curriculum documents. They were very invested in the process, and it was also part of their professional development, writing the curriculum, learning the new instructional strategy, so it was a really awesome experience. And then in June, I had 15 of the 20 some odd high school teachers participate in the same process. And over 10 days, we rewrote biology, chemistry, physics, and completed earth science and physical science, which we had started the year before. So it was a great deal of work that they put into it, and they wanted to start piloting, so we wanted to make sure we got it in front of the board as quickly as possible. Also, a lot of the changes to the high school courses, if they get approved through the cycle, we want them to go into the program of studies, which we start working on in November. So that's why we're coming here with everything at the first meeting.
So can I just stop you for a second,
Yeah.
Kate? So any modifications that are made, let's say we make modifications tonight, because it's the beginning of the year, will they get introduced down to the most granular level, in other words, the classroom, or will we wait to cluster them and start to institute them the following year? You know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, so what I offered to teachers was a 2-year implementation, because the state has moved the testing schedule a year forward.
Okay.
In their transition, and we want to best prepare our students
Sure.
for that. So quite a few teachers have already started early adopting before approval to go through the documents, and a lot of people were working on units that were similar to what they were already teaching using the new standards and instructional model.
Right.
But some teachers wanted to just dive in and
So, because wasn't that a concern from a district standpoint in terms of changing curriculum mid-year? That was a challenge for teachers that,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm misrepresenting this.
Well, I think it was the fact that in the past, and I think Carrie has brought this to the position this year, is that in the past we've modified curricular documents, especially at the elementary level. That was the
Okay.
primary concern, is that being responsive, we almost were too responsive
Right.
in the eyes of some teachers, that they would give feedback at the end of a unit, and then the curriculum department would quickly try to solve the problems that were identified. And then the teachers were like, okay, it's great, but it's overwhelming.
Right.
So at the elementary level, we kind of press pause.
Okay.
So changes only occur on an annual basis.
Right, that's what I'm talking
Again,
about.
as this
Okay.
particular situation, Kate had worked with so many teachers that
Okay.
it is a similar matter that they are doing this at an annual basis. It's just that there are so many more that have been involved in this process.
Gotcha.
Because again, when you take all the elementary teachers, there's well
There's a
over-
lot of them.
Yeah.
So it's at the discretion? Is that a fair statement to say? Is it at the discretion?
At-
I mean,
We all met together. They decided as a team. So like the bio team would decide
Gotcha.
which unit, like it
Okay.
wasn't just like,
I
not
see.
really,
So-
not me
so
today.
That
So-
speaks to the consistency piece.
Yes,
Across
and they
the
all had to
district.
communicate that information clearly to parents. So that information should have already been communicated to parents about who was doing which unit. But they did decide as teams who was going to do which ones.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we're also making some changes to the course sequence, which is why a lot of the proposed modifications are in there. We're also reducing the basic level of courses that was still in the old program of studies, but we weren't running them at the basic level, so that's one of the modifications, that we took out the basic level. Earth Science is changing. It used to be an 11th and 12th grade elective course, and now will be a freshman course. Integrated Science is going away. It was created specifically to support students on the CAPT exam, which is no longer being given. So we sort of grandfathered that one out, and then we added a physical science course because we knew we had a lot of students who weren't going to do 4 years of science. It just wasn't their area of interest, and it's not a requirement. So we created this physical science course, which is some physics and some chemistry, to reduce the number of kids who get out of high school without having taken one of those. We thought they were important, and we needed to provide that opportunity for students who could still take electives in the 4th year, but wouldn't take a full year of chemistry or physics. So that's kind of the proposed modifications that you see at the top. Do you guys have any comments or questions about any of those, Mr. Votto?
The first, I might have missed this when I left the room.
Yep.
The very first one, it says level honors, academic, general, and basic. So we're still doing basic?
No basics in anything.
So that
It should have been removed. I
Okay.
thought those were edited to remove all the basics, sorry.
I removed the online just a few days ago,
Okay,
on the online.
okay. So no basics in any of them.
So,
There's a couple.
I like Karen's proposal here, that we take items, group items A through F, does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah.
And Karen, you have some questions, you're just gonna pass them on outside of the meeting?
Oh, no, this is about the actual curriculum documents, which I'll give to you
Okay.
after.
Okay, good. So, take consensus on items 3A through 3F, Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes, thanks.
Okay.
And, go ahead.
So grades 6, 7, and 8, the next gen science standards don't define how you do a middle school curriculum. All of the standards at that level can be used at any grade level. So each district gets to decide if they want to do an integrated model with some physical, some life, and some earth, or if they want to do like a domain or a course model. Our science teachers in middle school many of them had done both. They had been here long enough ago when we did the domain model, and they felt that students didn't really retain the information. They liked it to spiral because the kids got a little bit every single year and they were able to build on their knowledge. So that's what's reflected in the new science units for grades 6, 7, and 8, is there are some for earth and space science, some for life science, and some for physical science.
What are they using? Do they have a textbook?
So we do have a textbook that aligns to some of the topics, but we've been using and looking and piloting at the online open educational resource on ck12.org, which can be customized if we don't like them, but they're called Flexbook textbooks. They've been around since 2007, I believe, is the first time that CK12 wrote the textbooks, and they're online.
CK12?
ck12.org. It's mostly STEM textbooks. There's no social studies, in case you're interested.
The letter C, the letter K, 12.org. That's
Correct.
it? I have to-
Yep.
And those are, as you said, open source.
They're open source online textbooks. They also contain quizzes and video resources. It's also customizable to over 30 languages with a click of a button. So if we have students, there's also the same content at different reading levels, so we can also differentiate for students that way. And some of them are still using some of the old textbook pieces. They're using this as another source of information for students.
That's grade 6
Yep, and my teachers who are using Classroom love it because they can take one section or one chapter or one paragraph and they can share just what they want the kids to read in the classroom. So they know the kids are getting those resources as well.
Waste time here, but how is it monitored? How does an administrator monitor whether the teacher is following the curriculum when there's all this mishmash, taking a little bit from here, a little bit from there? You know, it seems like there's no, what are they held accountable to?
They're held accountable to the assessments. So in the curriculum documents, you notice that we have formative assessments that are not just like generic do an exit slip, but are very specific to the content and the learning targets that were written. So the teachers are accountable to doing those formative assessments as well as the summative assessments that are in stage 2. They do have teacher autonomy when it comes to the learning experiences. That's why sometimes you might have noticed there was more than one choice because teachers can choose from those. And we want to have living documents, so one of the things that I'm working on with the teachers is when they have a new resource or learning experience, they're not just going to keep it to themselves, they're going to put it into the shared resource folders that we've set up in Google so everyone can look at it, and so we can curate those resources together as a staff.
The thing that will happen, and Kate, you're teeing up the last item of the whole night, which is Watson, but it's okay, I'll remember Ms. Latour put me last. But the thing is that the curating of that would go into Watson. So when Watson's ready for science, this ck12.org, the resources, since it's open sourced, would actually go into the Watson library for teachers by standards, by units. And then the teachers' curated materials could go into Watson also. So the teacher could pull it up and you'd have fidelity and reliability in terms of the materials as it attaches to the particular standards. So that in itself gets at some of the concern potentially about whether or not the materials are of good quality, and it doesn't necessarily get at everybody's teaching using the same materials, but that's where the assessment will tell us whether or not the students learned it, and giving the teacher the autonomy to have their instructional practice reflect their students in that class or their own teaching and learning styles.
So these units, these grade science units, that is the curricula for grade
Correct.
6 science. Right
Correct.
there. Everything I see right there.
Yeah, those are the units.
And they're all broken down, obviously, and they will stack subtopics and all that.
Yeah, they are,
Mhm.
they are.
Yeah, and they all have, like,
We don't
Kate,
have that in front of us, right?
We had it on Google Docs. I went through every one of them.
as Kate said, there's formative assessments. There's formative and summative assessments too. So as the teaching goes on, it really does
Yep.
capture everything.
And we also used, for some of our learning experiences, we relied on betterlesson.org because a lot of the lessons on there were vetted by the NSTA. So that's how we were judging quality of those. Some of them weren't all that great, but when we looked at the NSTA vetted lessons and resources, we selected very many of them from those as well.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure when we're looking at budget, I know that supply lists were included when you were delineating these things in the Google Docs. So I want to make sure that we have adequate supplies and lab paraphernalia, like whatever you need, included in the budget for these next-gen science standards, and this particular document indicates. So I want to make sure that that's included when you do the budget, so that we're not shortchanging the students when we go to implement this.
We haven't thus far. We wouldn't plan to do that in the future. So that is part of our normal practice that Kate had the pleasure of spending 3 days together at the NSTA conference, the National Science Teacher Association conference last week. And one of our major topics of conversation at breakfast, lunch, and dinner was how can we potentially, we need to have resources. How could we even embed some of the resource development in other curricular areas? We can't go into a lot of detail, but we're investigating some opportunities to actually, there's a lot of reusable consumables that get, on a yearly basis, we need to establish in our curriculum that we believe could actually come from other courses in a very unique way in terms of science. So Kate is working on a plan and that we're looking to put in place. But in general, we've always budgeted for resources. We've never shied away from that. We have our science center, as you know, that is housed over at Lyman Hall,
Right.
where we have the replenishing kits. And there's a tremendous amount of resources that go into that. And we've always been very fortunate to make sure that our students have always had what they need in that area, and we continue to do so. It's just that it's changing. Some of the things that we used to buy are not bought anymore, but we still have, the budget there, and Carrie has put in a very, very orderly system with Kate's assistance because they're both very organized individuals, and nothing's going to fall through the cracks. I can tell you that, because
Well-
it might have had opportunities in the past, but we have never fallen short, which is a good thing.
Okay, good to know. A couple of other things. As has always been the case, science is intertwined, and clearly in the curriculum that was written with math to analyze the data. Do we have any plans or specific ideas about supports that will be in place if a student is having difficulty with the math portion of the science curriculum?
Well, I've been working actually more with Carrie Laudadio first on interdisciplinary English and language arts units for science, but Christy and I have plans to do the same with math, because it's not just analyzing data, but also measurement is one of those big overlaps. And when you looked through those curriculum documents, I'm sure you saw that where they were aligned with the Common Core
I did.
math standards. So as we move into the Watson system, like currently a science teacher grades in science. But we're looking forward to that opportunity where in the Watson system, we could have a science assessment that gets scored as a math standard as well as a science standard. So it kind of forces that interdisciplinary, but it also allows both teachers to see, okay, this is a weakness, because they'll see both grades together. It won't be like, well, they didn't do this in science and they didn't do this in math, so we're gonna have different strategies for that. You would see that data coming together in a different way.
I think that would be very beneficial to help students if they are having issues. The only other quick comment I had is, in reviewing the human sustainability in grade 9 on the earth science,
Yes.
and all of these units had extensive vocabulary lists, but I'm a little puzzled as to, at least I didn't see any reference to fracking.
I don't know if they put in a unit on a lesson on that or not. I'll have to check and see
Yeah, I
if they
just
did.
thought with what's going on in today's world, that might be helpful in
Yeah.
that unit.
Yep. Or even in Earth Systems where they talked about human impact on the environment.
Exactly.
I know it is in one of the middle school ones, but obviously not the
I
same
didn't-
level of detail that they would go
Right.
into in the high
I
school
was
one.
specifically
All right, I'll check on that.
interested in that, so, thanks.
Any other questions? We can take consensus on items G through N. Roxanne?
Oh.
Great.
Uh,
Everything covered them all, right?
Yes.
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 And yes. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job. A lot there. Item 4 is a presentation on curriculum department goals for years 17 and 18.
Yeah. Sure you want me to click for you? No, I could. I could click for you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, ma'am. It was here.
I was working from two versions.
I was sitting here at the beginning. Carrie, do you have the other one?
Hold on, let's see if it's in one of these.
This one? Do you have another one of these? If not, don't worry about it.
I do, I think. I want you to look at the darker one because I had forgotten CTE on the light colored one.
Oh, so we should get rid of this?
So should we get rid of the?
Yeah,
light
you
color?
can. The only thing that's missing is CTE. So I wanted to start off the school year and provide you with some of our department goals. In looking at, anytime you sit down to set your goals, data review is a big part of the process. So I started off the presentation with a few quick slides. Some of them are our summative scores. What you see on the screen are our Smarter Balance assessment data back to 2014-15. And it's the percentage of students at level 3 or 4 who have met the state standard. And they're color-coded. This is rough cohort data. It's not matched student to student, but you'll see if you follow the color trail, you'll see that our scores, in some cases, are inconsistent. They go up, they go down. The first year of the test, 14-15, and really looking at the data and reading through the state assessment of the Smarter Balance assessment, 14-15 is a little bit of an outlier because they did change the test in 15-16. They took out the classroom activities, they took out the ELA performance task. So a true comparison would really be for 15-16 and 16-17. So there's a lot of work to be done. We're continually aligning our curriculum to the Connecticut core standards. We are providing students an opportunity to look at test format because equally as important as knowing the content is also knowing the format of the test, how to utilize tools in the best manner, and to ensure that our students are well prepared with taking a standardized assessment online. So our curriculum coordinators in English Language Arts and in math are looking at the data with teachers as well because the scores are inconsistent. And, you look at, is it format? Is it questioning? Is it content? Are we teaching rigorous enough? And those are all questions that as we sit down with our teachers and we look at assessment data, not just our Smarter Balanced assessment data, but our curriculum-based assessments, our STAR scores, we're looking for things that are aligned with student performance and then things that are outliers. Yes.
This last school year, though, we've used STAR, correct?
Correct.
16, 17?
Yep.
So we used that all last year plus ERLA.
Yep.
So can we predict that this year's testing is going to be much better? Do you think?
I don't know. To be honest, it's hard to predict.
Prescriptive work and collected more data.
When we look at STAR, STAR has the opportunity to be a predictor to success on Smarter Balance. So when we look at our students, when we take 16, 17 scores, we look at STAR, our students performing at the 50th percentile. And if they can perform around the 50th percentile as a predictor to ELA, they are in line with getting a level 3 on the Smarter Balance assessment according to STAR. In mathematics, actually, they would have to be around the 66th percentile in STAR in order to align with a level 3 in Smarter Balance assessment. So that is something as Mrs. Medancy and myself and the teachers are drilling down to the particular standards within STAR that the students are strong in week in, we're able to target our instruction within the classroom to better meet the needs of our students.
So just clarify.
Mhm.
So in math, grade 7, 16, 17,
Yeah.
39%
Mm-hmm.
scored at a
Level 3 or above.
level 3 or above.
Up from 35% the year prior.
But do we know specifically what skills they were lacking? Is it that specific? Does it give us that?
In STAR, yes.
No, I
In
mean-
Smarter Balance, no. It will give you the broad categories, and it will tell you whether the students are approaching or above or below mastery, but unlike when we would disaggregate the CMT data, it doesn't give you a very specific strand to go by. And that's still frustrating. So we're looking at, everything we can get our hands on in terms of vocabulary, format to questions, what do open-ended questions look like. We're looking at the interim block assessments to see whether or not we feel that would help in terms of types of questions and how to best approach them. And that's kind of where we are right now. We're trying to dig deeper into the data to determine, is there an area that we're not addressing, that there's a gap within our curriculum in order to really meet the needs of our kids.
Do you have access to a sample SBAC?
Yes.
I gave you the scores.
I know, but
An
what I'm
example
trying to
of
get
what
at is, I see.
That's the information you get. You see how it's broad, it doesn't really give you anything.
And if you look towards the left side of the page, it'll give you the broad categories that make up the English language arts and the mathematics. It doesn't get very specific to a particular standard within the Common Core.
Does a teacher have an ability to actually look at an older version of an SBAC to kind of see what this?
The teachers have the ability each year. There's practice tests that you can go on, and one is very specific to the grade level, and teachers will use that as an opportunity to walk kids through the test, to show them where to find all the tools for the test, how to, how to answer an open-ended question versus a multiple choice question, all of those things.
It's not skill. It's just for how the process.
No, they have, sample questions as well. So there's two different ones that you can use. There's a practice test specific to a particular grade level. So if I taught third grade, it's only third grade content.
Right.
And then there's another one that spans the content. So it might be for grades 3 through 5 or 6 through 8 that also provides you an opportunity. Those are available. Generally, the principals will send a link home to parents so parents can see the types of questions that are being asked. We as a faculty would review them as well, just so that people can have an understanding of the types of questions and walk the kids through how to take it.
Seventh grade math teacher, and the kids were going to take the SBAC. When do they take it? In spring?
March, April.
March, April. Would I know that there's going to be ratio on this test? There's going to be 5 examples of measurement. There's no way I would know that as an instructor to help my children prepare for this test.
No, you wouldn't know the number or the quantity of examples for a particular topic, but you have to anticipate that anything within your 7th grade math curriculum, because it is intended to be a summative test, would be on that.
And that is in line with our curriculum.
Correct.
Well, the Common Core should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have tried to, based on the knowledge that we do have, gear our units towards, for example, fractions in the elementary school. We start those earlier because, there are a lot of questions geared towards that particular content.
The thing is, Mike, what you're bringing up is very key, and I think Shauna stated it too. The value of the data we get from this assessment is very poor.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the past, we would know, remember there were all the strands of math,
Right.
and it said how many out of the number of possible questions. So we knew how many questions, we knew, for each student, how many attempts, which one, how many did they get right out of 5 questions, 6 questions. We had much more granular data. Now, the good news is that we had much more granular data. The bad news is that sometimes we ended up teaching to that granular data. So while we did not necessarily, our scores might have gone up, we also saw sometimes where they went down in other areas because we spent so much focus. I remember strand 11 and strand 13.
Yep, and 15.
You had measurement and, well, there isn't.
At least they're learning it.
No, there isn't. The challenge is that, again, it's a catch-22.
Let something else go.
Well, and the thing is also then are we teaching for knowledge or are we teaching to the test? And I think that that's something, and I know I've had conversations with a few board members and parents, that there are districts who have gotten into a routine. There are interim assessments that could be used from SBAC. And it's another assessment that districts now put their children through. And I say that, I have to say it the way I said it, that they put another assessment and the kids are learning how to take the test. Now, there's knowledge, of course, they're demonstrating, don't get me wrong, but they're learning how to take the test. And I guess we have to figure out a balance. How much do we want to put in that basket, knowing that we're going to have to take something else off the plate, because we can't continue to test kids every 5 seconds. But, so but the thing is, so that it's we got to really think about this. And it's concerning because I don't want students to sit. I mean, I don't mind them doing work on using technology, but I don't want them sitting being tested every 2 weeks either.
Maybe we can let something else go a little bit.
Well, but the thing is, it's balancing what's going to be more meaningful for a teacher. So we are going to be collecting some data from other districts in our DIRG to identify who uses the interim assessments, how value added have they used, who's using STAR, we know people aren't using ERLA at this point but are investigating it. So who's using what and how often? What is the level of responsibility on the part of the student, on the part of the teacher? Collecting some of that data so that we can continue to hone in what we're going to do, because the worst thing we can do is just keep adding another layer of testing for students, because then there's no time to teach.
But I also think you're doing a disservice to these kids to have them sit there and take a test when maybe some of the things that are on that test, because the teacher doesn't know what's on there, has not addressed it as much as they should have.
Correct.
That's not good for the kid either.
No, absolutely.
You know
And I
what I
think, and again, that's where we're trying to figure out, because we know, well, actually, Carrie and I are both part of a curriculum group that through CAPS, so we are going to be able to share that, and the state does listen. And remember, the thing that's interesting, and this is something that we're going to actually next Thursday we have a meeting, a conference call, that they're not setting the growth benchmark, because remember there's the ESSA, the Every Child Succeeds, the new version of No Child Left Behind that came out. They're going to set the growth standard for Wallingford come this spring, which then that'll be the number that the following assessments need to be based off of. So the state of Connecticut has received authorization to do that. So we're also working off of growth model. We're not working off of a year-to-year comparison mastery model. The other thing about this that Carrie mentioned, which when she first said it to me a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh my God, and it bothers me. These, when we used to, especially when I arrived and we started actually sharing the mastery scores based on goal, not proficiency, we were able to do apples to apples comparisons. So we were able to pull kids out who weren't with us, prior year, and actually get data to match up and say it was a matched cohort comparison. Right. So students in 4th grade that were with us in 5th grade, that was the percentage. We could look at that. We can't do that with this.
No,
We
the
have
state
no
is working on
capability.
that, though.
They are, because they're hearing complaints.
Yeah.
Because, again, looking at our demographics, we had last year over 300 students who came in and out of our school district during the school year. So, it could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were able to, in the past with the CMT, I was able to click on a little button, match cohort comparison. I'm sure you did when you had your principal report. And you were able to, and the number dropped of number of students who we can match, because there were kids who were either with us or weren't with us the year before. So those pieces are all factors. I think long and short of it, regardless, we need to improve. And I think the department recognizes that. I think that our teachers are doing, incredible work. They're trying to do the best they can. I think we need to continue to hone our skills through professional development. I think that the work the curriculum department is doing is very thoughtful and very reflective. I don't want to hang our hat on one assessment either, because this is one moment in time. We do have the STAR data, the ERLA data. They're not all coordinated in the sense that ERLA is more of a, it's not a standardized measure. We know that. It's kind of going back to when we used to use the DRA, so it's more of a developmentally appropriate measure to get a different type of data. The STAR is a standardized measure. which is our universal screen, which is dictated by state statute in terms of SRBI, scientifically research-based intervention. So, we're trying to pull the pieces together, and I think we're doing a good job. I think it's a matter of now just seeing what other people are doing, getting that, and moving forward.
Just when we're looking at what other people are doing, can we look outside of our country and not just keep it focused here? Because if you look at our scores on a larger scale, out of, I think it's 70 countries that are scored, we're in 25, and every year we kind of drop a little lower. So, and this is going to sound really bad, we have low scores for this country's assessment or our region's assessment area, but it's even lower on a global scale. And so even if we were at the top, we're still only 25%. So maybe what we need to look is not just at what are the people in our DERG doing and what are the people in our state or our country, but what other tools can we maybe implement to get our kids up there?
And I think that we've talked a little bit about some ideas, and again, an elementary teacher's life, I certainly do not envy. I have to say, and I thought I had my opportunities for growth on a daily basis as a middle school teacher, but an elementary teacher having to be the master of 4, areas is tremendous. We have had conversations about, does that look differently at the upper elementary? Do we start looking at people focusing on one content area or 2 content areas rather than needing to know all 4 to a greater depth? Those are conversations that we had begun to have last year, and I think we were trying to collect some research. The United States really doesn't have any good research, so I think we do have to look elsewhere. But again, that's a cultural shift, and people who go into elementary education, they really do have that passion for the whole child, and they don't want to let those 22, 23 little ones go to someone else during the day. They have a hard enough time sending them to art and music and PE and and those other things. So it's that shift, and I think we need to have a conversation also with the university system to talk to them a little bit about helping us with that shift, because it's just, I just don't think with the amount of material, amount of knowledge that we're asking students to know at the levels that we're asking them to know right now, I don't know how realistic it is for.
Colleges aren't aligned with us.
What?
Colleges aren't really aligned.
No, they're, and that's a very, what Mike just said, the colleges, that system is a disconnect. So I appreciate what you're saying, and we've already started looking last year, and I think we'll continue this year to try to figure it out. So I appreciate that.
Roxanne, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to clarify for my mind. So the Smarter Balanced Assessment, that's done typically in March and April, right?
Correct.
So when we look at, so these percentages that we're looking at, those tests were done in March, April, versus the STAR that we're looking in the handout that you gave us, that was done in September.
So this might be a little hard to see.
Yeah.
But this was just done this past September. So our window was about 4 weeks.
Right.
And this represents the percentage of students at the 50th percentile. ELA is on the left and math is on the right. We do this assessment 3 times a year. We do it as a purpose, as one of our data points for our universal screen to qualify students into intervention. And it also provides some very nice diagnostic reports for classroom teachers on standards that kids are strong in and weak in, so that they can, especially at the elementary level during their flex time, they can make small groups and instruct for weak areas. So at this point, you're looking at ranges anywhere from the high 40 percentiles to low 50s in terms of students meeting that 50th percentile or above.
So I'm trying to understand, and maybe you can't really combine the 2 decks of cards, if you will. So obviously this is being done in September of 2017. If we look, so you do a STAR 3 times a year, so you're going to
Correct.
do one probably around February,
do,
March?
No, actually, we do another one in December.
Okay,
And then we will do one in March because we try not to have STAR testing, our universal screen, going on while Smarter
makes
Balance
sense.
assessment is going on.
but those two test point times would be the most, am I saying this right? Okay, so, I mean, I would want to see that number compared to, if you go back to your Smarter Balanced, and how did that, and so March to March, say,
Yeah.
how those numbers align, or are they so different in the testing that they really don't, those two different decks don't play
Well,
nice
there
together?
is a fundamental
You know what I'm trying
difference.
to ask?
I do. So I will definitely preserve the March STAR so that when we get our Smarter Balance back in late June, early July, we can do a little bit of a
Yeah.
comparison because that wasn't preserved last year. And there is a difference between Smarter Balance and STAR. You know, Smarter Balance is somewhat adaptive, but it stays within the grade level. So if you're a third grader, you'll get a range of third grade questions depending on how you're answering it.
It
STAR,
self-adjusts for
It does.
the,
Yep.
as you ask
Within
it.
the grade level, though.
Right.
Within the grade level. STAR adjusts beyond the grade level. So you have students who may be testing, even in September, as a fifth grader, might be testing in the seventh grade range in the area of mathematics, or in the second grade range in reading. So it will go to that ability level of the child, and it helps the teacher understand where their reading level might be, which is a nice comparison when we do the ERLA, or where they are as a grade level equivalent in math or otherwise. And what's nice also about STAR is, you know, through the instructional planning, when the teacher starts to dig deep into the data, they have resources that are there to assist a student in their weak areas or beyond. So, but STAR will, as a predictor, I mean, it's not obviously perfect, but it will allow you to do a comparison against, as a predictor, against how they'll do on the Smarter Balance. So pulling that information again in December and then in March, you'll really be able to see, you know, seeing September against last May
Right.
isn't very helpful, but you
It's
know,
a
pulling
benchmark.
it in
You start
March,
somewhere.
we'll
Yeah.
see what happens when we get next year's scores back.
And I do, you know, I think, Sal, you made a really good point, and yes, we have work to do on our percentages and our numbers, but I think people forget that it is truly a snapshot of a person, a child, and that day. And who
Correct.
knows what's going on in that
Correct.
child's life, or even that particular week. You know, it could be even things like variables like a rainy week that kids or maybe kids didn't, you know, have a good lunch or a good breakfast, or what's going on in the home, or, you know, there's so many variables that it is truly just a snapshot in time for a particular student. But nevertheless, you know, when you're looking at our percentages,
Correct.
we have our work cut out for us.
We do, and-
But I think any standardized test, people don't realize
Agreed.
that.
Yep. Smarter Balance is a very rigorous test, and for elementary age students, it is tiring. As much as
Yeah.
we try to plan out everything, they're not testing 2 days in a row. You know, they're testing, you know, early on in the day. It is rigorous, and for some students, you know, they'll sit down and they'll finish it in a day.
Yeah.
And for some students, they come back, you know, the third time, fourth time to finish because, you know, they're taking their time and they're being very thoughtful. STAR really is about a 20-minute test. So what you see on that, you know, that next slide is 20 minutes in the life of a child for ELA and for math. So, you know, you do your best to encourage the kids to do their best. Sometimes you have a fast finisher, a quick clicker, and you may determine to redo or retake, emphasizing the need to do your best work. This is for the benefit of knowing where you are and how we can help you better in the classroom. But, you know, when you're taking a test on the computer, there are a lot of variables.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of one way that STAR and Smarter Balance is a little different from the ERLA. When you look at our ERLA data, this is from September. What's nice in terms of the culture of giving the ERLA is you have that one-on-one setting where you have that familiarity with your teacher, but there is subjectivity to it. And so, you know, as this is our third year going on of giving the ERLA, we have some interesting data from where students leave in June and come back in September. We have a lot of our kids, that yellow line, that at risk, the majority of those students are falling in the level that is directly below the grade level they're in. So if third grade teachers are giving the ERLA, a lot of our at-risk kids are falling in the second half of second grade. So it could be due to potentially summer slide. It could be due to our teachers being a little bit more stringent on entry requirements or otherwise. It could be, you know, there's a lot of reasons why it could be.
Does that take into consideration also of, like, you know, what if you have a child that's literally plunked into one of our schools because their family's relocated and English is a second language or non-existent for that child? Do we pull out any of those kinds of numbers of?
I don't pull them out, but we have several
Especially in
teachers
September.
in district who are able to give the ERLA in Spanish, which is
Okay.
nice, because then we're able to see, you know, is it a language difficulty or
Right.
is it a learning
Right,
difficulty?
right.
So we've been doing that, and we do that with STAR as well.
Okay.
And, you know, I feel like at this point, one of our main focuses this year, especially with the ERLA, it gives really valuable information, not just on a child's ability to decode or comprehend, but it looks at vocabulary, it looks at phonemic awareness in the phonics piece, and those are really important foundational reading skills that students need in order to be strong readers. The calibration piece is something we need to continue to work on. So for a team of teachers at a particular grade level in one school, we want them all scoring it the same way, which, you know, we need to work on. And we also need to work on that professional judgment piece. So we have students, you know, the ERLA dictates some very stringent entry and exit requirements. And for the entry requirements, we need to be able to look at the child, and if the child has a known difficulty, maybe they're an EL student where certain sounds are not a part of their native language, we can't be so stringent with our entry requirements that we leave them in a lower level of reading when they shouldn't be there. They should be at a higher level. The same goes with some of our students with special needs who may have identified decoding issues. That phonetic piece may not be as strong with that child, but you need to expose them to higher level text so that they're comprehending and getting the vocabulary, et cetera. So those are all the things that we're continuing to work on, as this is really for the entire district, only the start of the third school year.
Thanks
So-
for drilling that down for me a little bit.
It seems to me that the parents need to understand how, if their children know what they should know, if they know what they should have learned at this grade level or not. And I asked two parents today of children in the Wallingford school system, two parents who are quite involved with their child's education. Neither of them knew. Neither of them knew what they should be going by to determine whether their child has the knowledge they should at this grade level or not. We've got to have stuff that's simple, easy for the parents to understand.
I don't disagree, and I think a while ago, when I first came to Wallingford, we used to send out at open houses, like a little curriculum guide, and I think it's important, as education has changed quite a bit in just the few years I've been here, that we do need to have very clear indicators for success at each grade level, that parents are aware of what we're teaching and what skills and concepts are within each. I will say my kids don't go to school in this town. They go to school in a different town. And I have trouble finding that as a parent in that town as well. So I think it's an area that we absolutely need to be able to provide parents. Open house is a wonderful opportunity to do it, but really have a general sense in making our curriculum documents more available on the website, or there's plenty of different ways to do it. But so that parents have an understanding that my 3rd grader, my 5th grader, my 10th grader should be leaving with these skills and have a good working knowledge of them.
And also, Carrie, right, I mean, have they learned them or not? Right, I mean.
Well,
and
that
if
goes
they-
to our
That's-
reporting procedure,
that's
which
the reporting
needs
piece, and
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
adjustments.
and
And
that's
what do
where
they go by to find out if they've learned them or not?
well, and the
The
report card
They're
is
subjective.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
So what did it say? Okay, as long as we got Bs, they know it and. they should
exactly,
move
and
forward.
that's really where that's the challenge in every district right now, because when you have a standards-based report card, unless you have a system that you're able to put the information in, you're able to have a combination of objective as well as subjective information on those standards, then what you're not getting the fact and the reality. We have had the most most passionate conversations about when we talk about our report cards, especially at the elementary level, is some parents have been told by teachers, not just in Wallingford, that they don't give out 4s because nobody ever gets a 4, and some kids get a 4. That tells us, and this is not, I'm not saying this is just about Wallingford, this is any district you talk to, this is a challenge. So what we're doing, and that's why it's exciting, but it's a lot of work. It's not something that we can do overnight, is getting people to collect, and we're starting to discuss the concept of body of evidence. What does, if a student is demonstrating, if we've identified 6 key areas in English language arts that we want all students to master, we've established standards for those, we have indicators that could be shared, what does that look like? What is student A who gets a 3, why did they get a 3? What does that look like? What is the composite work that he or she presented to the teacher? What does that look like compared to a 2, compared to a 4, compared to a 1? That takes time, and that's what a lot of work is going on, and that's why it's so important that we establish the standards that you have reviewed. We've established the indicators in the core areas. We established scoring criteria, which the teachers are using. The idea is, and this is where we're not there yet, but again, as we move towards utilizing Watson more at the middle school, one of the fascinating elements, no pun intended, that we will be launching on a pilot basis with our middle school teachers is an app called Element, where, Jay, to get to your point, I don't want to lose you on this, so I need to drag you in on this one, is that they'll actually be able to use the iPad to take pictures of student work that then parents could see and say, my child met this particular standard. And this is an actual piece of material that shows that my child, in terms of reading, actually demonstrated this standard, so they can actually see that as a parent. Right now, I think if a parent, one of those 2 parents you spoke to, knew clearly what the standards were, and then actually had an artifact to show that their child met that, I think they would have a better understanding of what their child knows and is able to do. And as I've always said through this mastery-based learning journey, I said if the worst thing that came out of this is that we had clearly defined standards and indicators, and parents, this is always my last slide on every presentation, and parents better understood what their child knows and should be able to do, we've accomplished a lot. So I think that's the continued journey that we're on, but it takes a while to get there because there's many layers to the whole process. So I think that, as we talk to our middle school teachers right now, if we had them all in the room, they want to move a little bit more aggressively than they did a year ago, our math and English language arts teachers. And we have to balance that. And actually, I'll tell you what I told them, and Carrie was there. I said, if you want to move this way, I'm not presenting the message to the board and parents. You are. You're the practitioners closest to those students. You're the ones who have to deliver the service. This isn't going to be Dr. Menzo's brainstorm. This is going to be your initiative as teachers working with students. So once we get to that point, I think it'll give parents that data that they need. Because a report card, even at the high school, what does an A mean? We've had this conversation before. Unless it's backed up with what makes up that grade, it's not really telling anybody.
I think it's much easier to explain an A though, because it's been going on for years. So if a teacher gets an A, or if a child gets an A or a B, a parent understands that. They understand that.
They understand what the.
They don't understand a 4 or a 3 necessarily.
They understand what an A means quantitatively speaking,
Right.
but they don't understand what it means qualitatively
Well,
speaking.
it doesn't necessarily mean a child has mastered something.
Exactly.
But now the other thing I want to just say, you're saying standards. When you say standards, are you also comparing that to the word curriculum? In other words,
The curriculum is built on the standards. So like the documents that were presented tonight by Kate, every unit of study has the standards that are connected to it with the indicators, and then there's the scoring criteria.
I'm trying to go back to Jay's one of his original questions though. And Carrie kind of referenced this before too, that pamphlet that came out where you knew exactly when you had a child in grade 5, what was expected for math, what was expected in reading. Those were, to me, ideal, because you did know what your child was going to be getting in that grade, in each of those subject areas. And now I don't know if you want to say what the standards are, or what the curriculum, I don't know what you'd want to call it, but I think
Well, we do have this on our website right now. So there is a Google site that has all of this on there. This was established last year. And so parents could go on there. It's for every single grade level. It's already out there. We've messaged it to parents. We can re-message it, obviously.
Well, I don't know, but what concerns, yeah.
She showed parents how to get there from the homepage.
Well, that's what I like about open house, and I'm so glad we're doing the old open houses
It was
again,
fantastic.
because that's what we needed, not playing games.
But, yeah, I mean, these assessments that are here, I mean, each of those are showing that only about 50% of our students are achieving level. What happens to the other 50% of the kids? What's their future? How can we be passing them on to the next grade? These kids' futures are.
I think that,
doomed.
first of all, I would not want to bank anything on the fact that it's only 50%, personally.
But all three of these say about
So,
50%.
well, but again, these are 3 indicators that I would not want to bank the fact that it's only 50%.
We have to have something we can rely on. The parents have to have something they can go by.
I totally agree with you. But I think, again, it's multiple measures. I mean, until the other part of
It's
this,
multiple, Sal, though. It's got to be something that's simple and understandable by them.
if this
that they
were,
can-
the way I look at it is if this SBAC test, okay, and I'll just take the SBAC. If this SBAC test, if the state truly believed in its value and in its data that it produced, then the state would have fought harder for it to be connected to teachers' evaluation. They would have fought harder for it to have a qualitative and quantitative impact on teacher evaluation. They didn't. It's totally separated. So the fact is those scores don't have any impact, and I'm not saying that in order for a student to do well or to whatever to occur in that regard that it has to be connected to evaluation, but if there was truly a belief that these scores truly at this point in time, in its iteration, its third iteration, but really it's only its second because they changed the scoring after the first year. If they truly believed it had impact, they would have fought harder for it to connect it to the evaluation. And every state has moved away from that. They initially came out and they said, oh, it's going to impact evaluation, it's going to be connected. And every state has gradually backed off. So,
I don't know, but it's so important. I mean, what's more important than a child's education?
well, I'm not,
than what they receive
I
at
hope
home?
you're not,
No,
I
I'm not
hope
saying
you're
that.
not
I'm just
suggesting
saying,
I don't
but
think that's
I
the
think it's
case.
so important, and their education is so important that, I mean, again, they're not going to be able to get jobs that are going to enable them to live a decent lifestyle as adults unless they've got solid education.
Jay, I'll tell you another little piece of data because I take this very seriously. I've gone back since well before my time here, 2003, 2004. At that time, our test scores they were maybe 10% higher than this. Over that time, I think we've had many kids graduate, and I'm assuming we've had many successful kids graduate. Large percentages of our students graduate. I think the test scores, you have to be very, very cautious when it comes to this data because, again, it's got to be you got to be very cautious.
Whatever it is, though, I think we have a responsibility to provide something to the parents that they can rely on. as to whether their child is learning what they need to learn or they're not. Because if they're not, something's got to be done. They can't keep moving on, right? Because they're supposed to know how to read by the end of 3rd grade. They're supposed to have the math fundamentals down by the end of 4th grade. If they don't, what happens? Right? They're not going to catch up and learn them later on.
True.
This is
So
just
it's-
one time.
Yeah, I don't,
Correct.
Mike, I don't know what it is. I'm
This
just
is
saying
September.
we have to provide something.
Right, so this is what we are doing though. By doing this, we're being provided information based on these assessments that we get, this early assessment. This is where they are right now. So hopefully, you're saying, what do we need? So now we need to understand where the child might have fallen on that early. And then that teacher, that's where the intervention comes in, to work with that child to now, so that the next time they take the early, hopefully they've accomplished it. They met that goal that they didn't meet the first time. That's the purpose.
Well,
of
what's
the
what's
assessment.
happening with this? Each teacher is asked to set goals for their students, and we have a system that they put it into school pace. They put it into school pace, and then those goals are monitored. Those are available for parents to talk and talk to the teacher about. Shauna.
I guess, so my question is that I get all of that, and I understand this is a September ERLA, and I love the student goals. But if the student has an individual goal, but they also have the overall goal of that grade, correct?
Correct.
Right, so whatever it is, 3rd grade, you have to, here's where I want you to move to, and here's where you gotta be at the end of the year. What happens when those kids don't make it there at the end of the year? Now, and I think that that's what Jay was trying to get at, because you can't, after a certain, you just get further and further behind. So even if it's, you're 10% below where you needed to be to master enough to move on, next year, you might be 30%. I mean, and we keep pushing. So what are we doing for that? Because that seems to me to be a fundamental problem.
Well, we have intervention. We offer, but we can't mandate summer school unless that's what we want to do as a district. That'd be a new direction. We offer resources for over the summer. We provide all the resources that you can in terms of. We tried extended school time for students. We've tried all those different opportunities. This community is not really open to the extended school time for students. There was very little buy-in to that. It was unfortunate, but that was the case. So with the students that are behind, and Carrie, you could jump in as being at the building level most recently, we provide the intervention services. If it's obviously a large discrepancy, then it potentially could be an area for special ed. We don't want to go there immediately because we don't want to classify or identify students unnecessarily. But we provide the special services. We provide the additional time during the day. Again, I think we do the things that we can do within the means. If we want to make, and this, I know we've had this conversation for a couple of times, if we want to make a decision that at the end of a school year, if a child's not reading on grade level, that they do not move to the next grade level, that you can make that decision. You have to understand, though, that a child might not be reading on grade level, but they might be computating on grade level. So now you have a very, very challenging circumstance. Does that child stay back in 1st grade for just reading, but go to 2nd grade for math? That's where again, where the mastery-based learning system, if it's put in place, and again, it's not something that can occur, unfortunately, in a year or two. It takes time. That's where you would have that fluidity. So you would know that a student could be excelling in one area, not excelling in another, and then you meet the child where he or she is. So they're not a 1st grade student, they're not necessarily a 2nd grade student, they're not necessarily a 3rd grade student. They're a learner that's in a different place in their development.
Which I think is wonderful, and
but it's
philosophically, it sounds
I know.
awesome, and we're not there. But I think, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but maybe that we should have a serious conversation about what we're doing about the students not meeting there. I mean, I know we offer the intervention, but maybe we need to have a serious conversation as a board about what the options are, and maybe if we need to take a different direction, because it's apparent that there are students who are moving on who are not there in whatever area, and we need to take another look at how to get them to the next level and what we might need to do.
we'd be
Right?
open.
It could be anything.
But you
But
gotta remember, there are many factors that work into that.
Right.
It's not that easy.
I didn't think it would
It
be
isn't,
easy.
and I don't know if you're ever gonna find the answer, but you cannot look at a standardized test like this or an assessment and make this assumption that this is the level the child is at, because Roxanne was sort of alluding to that before. With, it's a snapshot of a particular day. You don't know what type of a history that child has, what kind of a background that child has. Is education important in that household?
You know
I
what?
mean, it's just the gambit, it's just.
So, and that's all wonderful, and whether or not education is important in that household or not, I get how that affects your scores and where you are learning, but that's still, and it's not about the score, it's about that student being successful. So even if they're coming from a household where education isn't important, and maybe they need more assistance from the school, we need to have a plan in place that addresses that, and not just move them on,
See, but I think
and
we-
not just
But-
push them
But I
forward.
think
Hold on.
also, I don't want to, I also just, if I can interject for 1 second, I don't want, and I know you're not suggesting this, that the teachers don't have plans.
no, I
And that
know.
administrators
Not
don't have
at all.
plans. I just want to make sure, because
No.
this is being videotaped, and I don't want you to be misconstrued in what you're saying. We have a lot of painstakingly detailed plans on students who need support, and layers of support are put in place, be it paraeducator support, be it intervention support, be it extended time, be it enrichment time that's used for remediation. We have more supports in this district than we certainly had 9 years ago. That's for certain. And I think that we continue to grow in that area. I think the other challenge that you see is that, there's a lot, as we all know, there are also many more social, emotional issues coming into our schools, which are impacting students' abilities to be able to comprehend and to grow. We're addressing that. We've done that with the DESA, with the review of social emotional learning at the elementary level. We've been beginning to offer more intense SRBI in that area, because if a student's not able to learn, they're not going to be able to learn. So there's just so many layers, and I think we could continue to have the conversation. I would love to have when our principals are here in November to talk about their school improvement plans. I think that's a great conversation to have, and we can make sure that they're more than, I'm sure they're already going to be prepared, but even more prepared to have that conversation, because I think what you're getting at is so key. And figuring out what other districts are doing, what other countries are doing. I know that, again, unfortunately, we're not in a society that, feels that retention is favorable. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes we'll recommend it, it won't be accepted. Sometimes we won't recommend it, and people will want it, and we'll compromise.
But it doesn't
we
even have to be. I'm not talking about leaving kids behind or staying in the same grade. I'm saying that we need to look at, talked about extended day, you talked about summer school, you talked about options that the board has that we could possibly implement. And
Well,
then
we
even
did
beyond
implement
that-
them,
Well, I
and
know
we
we've
have the data
implemented
that-
extended day and
Yeah.
stuff like that, but there are other things, and maybe we need to relook at that. Maybe we even need to relook at the classroom itself, which is something that we've talked about, well, you and I have, about just different ideas. But switching for English, and now you have kids going with grade level, or just reevaluate how we're doing it, because what we're doing right now, and with all the efforts and everything that we're trying to do, and I know our teachers work hard and our administrators work hard, and I know that it's one snapshot out of a day, but IRLA's done throughout the year, and so is STAR, right? They're given multiple times throughout the year, and we're still having students who aren't meeting it, so something has to be done. And that's all I'm saying. And I don't know what the solution is, and I know it's not a one solution fits all kind of situation, but I just would like to have another conversation and another look at it, because this isn't good.
Well, the more we talk about it, the more I think about it, the more it leads to where you're going, mastery-based learning. And the faster we can get there, the better off we're going to be. But to me, from what I understand about this, it seems to address all the things we've been talking about.
I think
We agree.
what will be helpful when we represent the data in December is, when you look at our IRLA data, the kids that are emergency are likely getting supportive services through intervention, EL bilingual, potentially through special education. Our at-risk kids, they're looking at the data to put them in groups with a focus on the same skill, where the area of weakness is, so that through guided reading or strategy groups, they're able to meet the needs of those kids. September, usually with IRLA, is a month where we see this. And through consistent everyday instruction by the classroom teacher targeted on their areas of weakness, you'll see these kids grow. And that's really what we want. We want to look at their growth over time and moving them from where they are to that next level. And we take it one level at a time. And from there.
School for 2 months either.
Correct. So when you look at, STAR, some of these kids are being tested in STAR the second week of September. That's tough. It is. And then, by December, I'll represent our STAR data and our early data, and I'll compare it with September so that you can see where we are at that point. But the teachers, at this particular level, in middle school and high as well, are very in tune to what their students need. They're not teaching to the whole class. They're teaching in small group. They're teaching individually to meet the needs of the children. And intervention works collaboratively with classroom teachers. Our literacy coaches and numeracy coaches are in the buildings, in the classrooms, working with kids as well, looking at best practice and where we can get the biggest bang for our buck instructionally. And our kids do show growth over time. So while I know that the data may look discouraging at this point, I have the utmost of confidence in our teachers to get them to where they need to be. And if students are struggling to move and to grow, then our SRBI teams at the individual schools are working to develop plans that are intensive to that child's need. And we go from there.
All set?
I just
Kathy,
want
go
to say one thing, that I think there's other factors. I mean, data is good to a point.
Yep.
But I'm not a firm believer in, oh my God, look where we are. And I especially don't like comparing us to other countries, because you have no idea what kind of testing they're doing. A lot of those cultures only allow certain kids to go to school because they have to meet a certain level before they're even allowed to be educated. So you have to look, there's so many different variables with regard to looking at things globally versus just looking within our own United States or our own district or our own DIRG. There's all those kinds of comparisons you can make. But there's other things that, you're not, when you're looking at these figures, you're not factoring in how many of those kids are special needs kids, how many of them are English language learners, how many of them are male versus female. We know that boys tend to mature, I'm sorry, but they do. They don't mature as quickly as girls. And look at how, in first grade there, it's the highest level of emergency, and then look how it drops down. Well, how many of that is the boys catching up versus...
Well, and
reading
reading in
so many
general
factors.
is a very developmental process. Everybody, you could give the same instruction to 20 kids, they're all going to grow differently. Right. So at the younger levels where you see high levels of emergency, that is in line with what you generally see. Some kids can pick up a book and start reading. Other kids, it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. So, the biggest thing for me will be to see as each month goes by, I can continue to monitor this. The principals are monitoring it very carefully. The teachers are monitoring it very carefully to ensure that the right level of growth is happening within their class.
So in December, Carrie, could you, when you provide, so in December, you're going to provide updates. So, and that's fine. Thank you for that. Will you be able to show us or remind us of our September percentages to our December?
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not like Mrs. Levac. I don't hold on to paper.
And
So that would be helpful for me.
I would just like to also say we appreciate your support to have these conversations, because believe me, we're always challenged to make sure that we're trying to do the best we can, and I know our teachers are working very hard. And in doing so, and I know, Shauna, personally, the goals that get set, that's something that we really need our teachers to continue to do, because it is in the best interest to make sure that we have our parents aware, as Jay was saying, so that when a parent goes to a parent conference, they know about their child's reading goals. They know where they're established. They know when they're going to be reviewed again. Those are updated. So it's good to have an idea of where your reading level is, be the color that they read, but it's also important to know that goals have been established. So we appreciate your support as a board, continuing to work with our teachers to make that happen, because that's really an essential piece of this progress.
And I just want to say, don't get me wrong. I think our teachers are doing a wonderful job. I think I was probably at a board meeting where I said, I love that I have a sheet that lets me know what we're working on.
That's why I alluded to you because
Yeah, no, and it's wonderful. And so I know our teachers are doing a good job, but it doesn't change the fact that
yes.
it's scary, and I just want to know how we can do better. And that's all
We
I'm saying.
totally agree.
Understand.
Can't do this much longer, I really can't.
Okay, so.
Okay, all set? Oh, go ahead.
Yep, sorry.
That's right.
So this is our science data moving on, self-explanatory, and our SAT data. So primarily, our department goals, I broke it down by each department. So for health and PE, Mr. Loomis is embarking on a revamp and revision of high school. It's been quite some time. Looking at employee health and wellness and collaborating with Dr. Menzo, the town, on the Eat, Play, Unplug initiative. For science, Mrs. O'Donnell spoke with you earlier about the huge shift from our current curriculum to the next generation science standards. I cannot stress how hard she has worked with high school and middle school 39 units. It was a lot of hard work on her part. She's done a wonderful job. And looking at now from here, the elective courses. We're transitioning the Science Resource Center and all the elementary as well. Social studies, Jim Francesi is equally embarking on a large task of rewriting the K-5 social studies curriculum to align with the state frameworks and the Wallingford Public Schools indicators and standards. He has a great team of teachers working with him. It's been quite some time since social studies been looked at, and they're really making a concerted effort to align it to existing English language arts. So there's that cross-curricular teaching that that needs to happen in an elementary schedule.
When do you expect that to be completed?
I would say in spring you'll be getting that because they've done quite a bit of work already so far this year. Fine arts, he's also embarking on a task with the music teachers in district. It's been quite some time since they've looked at their curriculum as well, in writing graduation standards and indicators, as well as scoring criteria to align what they're doing in class with mastery-based learning practices. English language arts, Carrie Laudadio has done a tremendous amount of work with this department over the last few years. At this point, she's able to now, having really refined her curriculum, her indicator standards and scoring criteria, now she's working with her teams in elementary, middle, and high to look at formative assessment to inform student growth. We want to ensure that our students are have complete understanding of our standards. In order to do so, we need to be looking at their work all along the way and determine how to revise and reflect on our teaching practices to ensure that our students are growing. And vocabulary instruction has been it's a foundational skill that's important for every reader. It's been identified as an area that needs some attending to in elementary, middle, and high. So she's looking at that as an integrated approach instead of just teaching it in isolation, to teach it throughout, everyday reading opportunities. Career and technical ed. Rob Covey has a very large department that is embarking on a lot of curriculum writing. Some of their courses, as you saw back in June, have stage 1 and 2 complete, and he's working on the learning plans to all of his courses and building the capacity of the teachers within to align to our standards, our indicators with a level of rigor so that all students can be successful. Math. Mrs. Medancy, again, like Mrs. Laudadio, has done a tremendous amount of work in their curriculum writing, so they're working on formative and summative assessments. At the middle and high school in particular, elementary has worked off of a common summative assessment at the end of all their units for quite some time. So now middle and high school are looking at that as a means of looking at student acquisition of the indicators and standards in a common way. Computational fluency instruction is going on in the elementary school. Fluency is an important foundational skill for mathematics. So as a new addition to the elementary focus, we have initiated a fluency plan that allows teachers to see where students are and be able to see where they're falling down. So as we gave the assessment in September, we looked at not just are they able to get the right answer, but what strategies are they using, and are they flexible with their numbers? And we're getting a lot of very valuable feedback from the teachers. And then lastly, world language. Kim Moore is working with all of the world language department to revise their course curriculum, create formative assessment opportunities, and she's piloting the Connecticut Certificate of Global Engagement and Competency, which she is doing a short presentation on next month at next month's instructional meeting for. So that kind of sums up curriculum these days. And at the end of the year, I'll report out on our department's goals and objectives and how far we got, as well as keeping you posted each month through instructional committee with any units or otherwise that we're completing.
Good.
Okay?
Thanks very much. Any
Great.
questions? Debate? Great.
Do we wanna-
I think
Yeah, we could hold.
item 5A we've covered, right? Talked about the measurements. And Sal, Watson, okay if we hold it for another meeting?
Absolutely.
More effective.
4 hours is about all
Thank
we
you, everybody.
I'm good with,
Okay.
I'm-
Any
Hey,
public
hey, but remember,
comments?
this was 2 meetings,
Public
so.
comments?
That is true, we did.
Meeting's
combine
adjourned,
two.
folks.